Hello. For the Swedes amongst you, jag pratar inte svenska. For the non-Swedes, I don't speak Swedish. English is not my mother tongue either, but I'll try to deliver something which is understandable. I'm going to talk about the Belgian fire service and the way it's changing, and I had a little part in that. And I thought a bit about now, if we want to make change, what is important, and how can we deliver change? Maybe first something about myself. As Ed Horton says, context is crucial. Everything I'm telling you, it's starting from my point of view, my context. So Stefan introduced me already. I work in 2 fire services. I work as a senior officer in Brussels. We use the military ranking system. My rank is a major. I get to lead about 250 firefighters, one of our 4 crews. So each 4 days they are on duty 24 hours and they protect the capital of Europe. And since a couple of months I'm their boss in a way, and I try to make things evolve in the good direction. Besides that, I do a bit fire prevention and then mainly focus to tunnels, railroad tunnels, road tunnels, the subway system in Brussels. And I'm also in the training division where I'm taking care of firefighting training. So that's what I do in Brussels. It's a career department, 1,000 guys. It's big, it's a city. It's not as big as Raymond's Hong Kong, but also we have parts of Brussels where we have a population density of 10,000 persons per square kilometer. So it's metropolitan in a way. On the other hand, there is Oostkamp. Oostkamp is my volunteer department. There I'm not a senior officer. We call it a corporal. It's a rank between firefighter and the guy who commands the engine. So there I go to fires. I do the fun stuff. When there's a fire, I get to have the hose and to extinguish and to cut open cars. So there is the other side of the spectrum. In Oostkamp, we protect 40,000 people, and I guess the area is not so much smaller than Brussels. So population density is way lower. It's 2 different angles on what the fire service does. That's my background as a firefighter. Some people that were here today, some people were real practitioners, like John, long experience. We have then people who were more scientists, like Dr. Sertqvist, who look at the fire service from a science perspective. Well, I may be the middleman. So this is me graduating as a fire safety engineer 4 years ago from Ghent University. I spent 1 semester in Lund. I studied 5 months at Lund University, and I'm a guest professor now at university teaching a course on firefighting. I've done some research into ventilation, and now I'm trying to figure out some stuff on how fast crews can do stuff. So I do a little bit of scientific research, and I try to share that. I try to be on the limit between science and firefighting. I remember IFIW, my first IFIW, Stefan Svensson was there in all black with a cap. Firefighting is science. Black cap, red letters. I remember it, and it's true, firefighting is science, and I try to be in the middle of those 2 worlds. The last picture is the picture of IFIW 215. A number of people in that picture you might recognize. Some of them are here today. I've learned a lot of these people, and I'm about exchanging, sharing information, sharing knowledge. So for those of you who don't know where Belgium is, it's a very tiny country. If there's a storm, then we can take it inside. It's here in the middle of Europe. For those who don't know it, we invented the fries. So Americans, you're wrong. It's not the French fries. We invented the fries. It's the Belgian fries. Yeah? And we're also known for beer. So for those of you who haven't visited Belgium, you could come to Belgium and drink a different beer every day. And at the end of the year, you would still not be finished drinking every day another beer. Personally, I don't drink beer, but I hear they're very, very good. You could, yeah, some of us tested that. Now, Belgium is a very complex country, maybe one of the most complex countries in the world. This is a map of Belgium. I'm from the blue-colored part, here somewhere, and there we speak Dutch. In the red part of the country, they speak French. And in the red part of the country, there's an even smaller part in green. You know, yesterday Jens talked about the business model of the Germans. But the first time they had that business model, we took the green part and we took it from them. But, well, more correct would be the Canadians and the Americans took it from them and gave it to us. But now we have 70,000 people speaking German in an 11 million country. And everything we do needs to be translated in Dutch, in French, and in German for the 70,000 German-speaking people. The light-colored area is Brussels, so 1.2 million people. That's a bit over 10% of the Belgian population lives in that area, and there officially they speak two languages, Dutch and French. It makes things quite complex. And that's important for my story. So these are the Belgian fire services. Each of these blocks is a fire service. We have 35 zones, about 18,000 firefighters. 5,000 of those are career firefighters. So what I'm going to tell you is the CFBT story in Flanders, the blue colored part. Just because of language reasons, it's in Dutch. If you would have to do it for the complete country, it would be 3 languages. That makes it too complex. So I'm going to give you the short version of what we did in 10 years of CFBT in Flanders. We're going to talk about the instructor as a key factor in change. We're going to talk about learning, and then we're going to have a talk about what if you want to have change and you have a whole group of instructors who have to work together. So this is a picture of a container which is in Antwerp. That's the north part of Flanders. They were the first to have live fire training. For some of you it might sound strange, but I got hired as a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter, in 2002. And we got trained. There were 50 of us. We had theory and we played with hoses. And one day at the fire station, there was no fire academy. The training took place in a fire station. So we gathered at the big fire station. In the back of the station, they emptied some litter bins. So they had a square meter of litter. They set it alight, and we had 3 powder extinguisher dry camp. And that was our live fire training. So training was very poor. The guys from Antwerp were the first. They came to Sweden, or Swedes came to Antwerp, and they started delivering training very Swedish-like. They were the first in Belgium to do so. In Brussels, Brussels and this part is a province of Flanders. We made an agreement to start together live fire training in 2008. So this year is 10 years ago. And we started working with a Dutch company which helped us. A bit later we discovered the attack cell as a training prop, and we had a training program with the attack cell. It was pretty good. It was for the first time that we had live fire training for our firefighters. Especially for the young ones, it was important. They got to learn things, to master skills in the fire academy, which was not possible beforehand. This is the part of the country where I'm a volunteer, and 1 year later they also wanted to have live fire training, so they came to me and they said, hey, would you train our instructors? And so we did. Hein was one of the first instructors in that part of the country. And then in 2 parts of the country we had a common program with a common prop, with common evolutions, and also with feedback from one another. 3 years later, this part of the country decided to do the same thing, and we went there, trained instructors over there. 2016, 2 years ago, another part of the country decided, hey, we want the same program. And this year we trained for the first time the Antwerp guys who came to Sweden 18 years ago, and we retrained them to do the same thing. So in 8 years' time, we have a common CFBT program for 7 million inhabitants. In 5 locations, 6 academies. We have the attack cell as a basic object. And then from 2012 on, John came to Belgium to teach instructors for the T-cell. And by the end of the year, there will also be a T-cell in each of the 5 fire academies. So we have 2 identical props. We built last year a large volume cell, an even more advanced prop. 3 other academies are also thinking about positioning one. So John, you will have to keep coming to Belgium until you're like 85. And we're making progress to have a program which is uniform. When I see Shimon, who in a couple of years' time got 18, 20 props all over Poland, the same thing everywhere, well, that's probably going to take us 15 years. But we got there. Yeah, maybe important, this is a quote I took from Chandra Fal, the guy who invented, in a way, reading the fire. He said once, we're all standing on the shoulder of giants. These are my 4 giants. So Paul Grimwood isn't here, but John is here and Ed is here. Sean isn't here either. They've done tremendous work in the past, and we've used that to carry it on. So what happened in the meantime in Belgium, because this is about change and not about CFBT per se, until 2008, it was the situation, we take a bit of garbage, set it on fire, and the students will extinguish it with a portable extinguisher. And then, you know what, if you go to a fire, that thing with smoke billowing out, that doesn't resemble at all, in the middle of the back of the station, some garbage that's burning, well, then just go in and figure it out for yourself. Until 2008, and that's only 10 years ago, that was the case. From 2010 on, we had 1 day of live fire training, which was compulsory. So 1 day, 3 evolutions. From 2010 on, we said that's the minimum. If you want to certify a firefighter, he needs 3 live fire trainings, he needs 1 day of live fire training. From 2015 on, we have a whole curriculum, and that firefighter needs 48 hours of live fire training, almost 20 evolutions. And when he wants to become a crew chief, the guy who commands the engine, he has 60 more hours of live fire training. And if he wants to become a senior officer, another 10. So where there was no live fire training whatsoever, I remember a couple of years back, John made a survey about how much live fire training do you have in your country. I was ashamed to be a Belgian. In our curriculum there was hardly any live fire training. Now we have, from firefighter to battalion chief, we have almost 120 hours of live fire training. Is there somebody who has more? That's what I thought. So we have made a huge leap forward. Now, the hours is one thing, the quality is something else. We're still working on how do we deliver now high quality training. It's easy to have guys and burn stuff, but how we bring them as far as possible during that time. So maybe one important aspect of my talk here is, if you want to change an organization, you have to change it through people. And if you want to implement change, if you want your people to master something, you have to invest in those people and train them properly. Something the fire service in Belgium has done very poorly for decades is investing a shitload of money in trucks and in gear. There are numerous of examples, like the fan, the thermal imaging camera. They were being purchased, they were being put in the engine, and then firefighters had to figure out how to use them. One of my points of view, which is really important, is invest in people. Put your money in the people so they have skills, and then they'll figure out the problems with the gear they have. The gear is only a tool. The people those are the ones who are really solving the problems we have. So we have a good news show in Belgium. In 10 years' time, we did a lot, we made a lot of progress. But yeah, this has happened in a way, but it also brings lots of challenges. In Flanders now we have a common CFBT program over 5 locations with 6 fire academies, 250 plus instructors. But over 10 years' time, things have changed. You've heard Steve's talk, you've heard Ricardo's talk. The way we look at fire is no longer the same. So some instructors who were trained 10 years ago, I trained them. I told them, don't extinguish the fire from outside, you'll push the fire. Whereas now we have a completely different view on that. But if those early instructors aren't being recycled, if their knowledge is not being brought up to spec, then your program is going down the drain. You'll have instructors which are going to tell stuff they believe in, they've been taught that way, but it's no longer valid. And that's a challenge, because these people, they are far away. I know John has a different idea, but for us in Belgium, 100 kilometers is a huge distance, you know, it's 200 kilometers. Probably the Swedes are also thinking, what's that guy talking about? But for us, if I'm driving 100 kilometers in almost every direction, I'm in another country. So for me, that's a large distance, and my firefighters think that way. If I ask firefighters to drive 1 hour further for training, half of them have something like, oh no, that's not necessary, I'd rather stay home. We don't like to be in cars. So that's a challenge. How do we get the knowledge into the heads of our instructors? How do we improve their knowledge? How we keep it up to date? How do we ensure that our training is consistent? If we have two groups of students at two different locations, that they get the same training, that they have a good quality, that they are being trained in a safe way. We can't burn students. We used to burn students. I got burned as a student, as a firefighter. Yeah. Now, the instructor. This is an instructor. Look at the picture. What do you think about this guy? Does he seem competent? Do you think this guy knows what he's doing? Do you think he knows the stuff? Would you go to war with him? Do you think the knowledge transfer will be okay? Does he look passionate? Is this a good instructor? What about this guy? He's in a way also an instructor. What do you think about this guy? Is he knowledgeable? Is he passionate? Does he know what he's doing? And how will be the knowledge transfer there? Two instructors and say they're trying to do the same thing, to pass knowledge to a group of students. An instructor, he must be knowledgeable, he must have knowledge. A very interesting quote by Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And that's something that Ricardo touched, that John touched. One of the main roles as an instructor is to take something which is fairly complex and translate that into something that's easy to understand. And that task is hard. And to be good at translating difficult concepts in something that's easily to understand, you have to understand very well what you're dealing with. An instructor, the way we say it in Dutch, has to be way above what he's teaching, so he can answer questions. So he knows what he's doing. That's an important part. He has to be comfortable, at ease. If I'm teaching class and every 5 minutes a student is asking a question and I have to say, I don't know, I will look it up, how does that make me feel as an instructor? If every time there's a guy pointing out, hey, you don't know this, you don't know that, an instructor needs to have sufficient knowledge to be efficient. The stuff which he's teaching has to be interesting. Yeah, on the right you'll see one of our lesson plans. Yeah. He will work with learning outcomes, and those must be adapted to the level of the students. You guys come from different fire departments, or most of you. You know there's a difference between that guy who sets his first foot in the fire academy and the guy who has been 15 years on the job. And in the group of guys who are 15 years on the job, there will be a difference between a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter from a very small station where there's a fire once a year, and a firefighter from the busiest station in the capital of your country. People who go to fire every month, they look at it differently. In my volunteer fire station, if you have a good fire, well-developed fire, I'm happy. I mean, I'm happy as hell. I'm happy as a kid. Some of the other guys, they're stressed. And that's normal. They don't get to see this on a regular basis. In Brussels, I do. The better it burns, the more happy I am. Yeah, that's why we live for, right? To extinguish fires. But that's important. If you have the guys who are really at ease with fire, you will have to challenge them in a different way than when you receive a group of students which are actually a bit stressed. Both are okay, but the learning outcomes will need a little bit of adaptation. The instructors need to be flexible. And in order to ensure equality, you need to structure everything in a lesson plan. Learning, in a way, it's personal growth. It's doing stuff which you don't master and trying to master it, to come to terms with it. And you don't need ballast. So in the lesson plan, there needs to be consideration. What do we need to talk about? What do we need to discuss? And what don't we need to discuss? What are we not going to talk about? It needs to be focused. So students, they know, hey, we're going that direction, and it should be more or less a straight line. I guess most of you know this graph. Everybody has a comfort zone, but this is where the magic happens. The best learning happens outside of the comfort zone, and that's an important thing. The instructor needs to make it interesting, so he takes his students outside the comfort zone, and that needs to be an invitation. You can't take them and drag them outside the comfort zone. That's not how it works. You need to invite them, and the best way to do that is make something interesting. If there is a motivation with the students to step outside their comfort zone because they feel, hey, it's okay, I'm safe, this guy knows what he's doing, then they're learning the most. So instructors, the flexibility is important. There is the learning outcomes which should be suited for the group, but then within that group there might be some flexibility necessary. The instructors need to work in function of their students. So what's necessary for your class, what's not, that's something you need to be very well aware of, and by preference before you start teaching the class. So in the learning outcomes, in the lesson plan, in the class, it should not only be interesting, but we should limit ourselves to the topics which are necessary for learning. Yeah. Again, the lesson plan can specify all those themes. The lesson plans we have, and I'm going to come back to those, they are like 6 to 10 pages for one evolution. They're fairly detailed, and they set out the learning objectives, but they set out some kind of limits. And within those limits, the instructors can adapt the exercises, but they cannot adapt too much. Otherwise, there's no consistency. It's a balance. Back to this picture, an instructor needs to be driven. He needs to have a drive. He needs to be inspiring. He needs to be passionate, and he needs to try to share that passion. You know, John touched upon it earlier on. Most students, he says all the students, they don't come back to the fire academy in a better shape. How is that? It's a question I often ask myself. How come firefighters don't study more, work harder, train harder? John showed us the memes. You would think that these guys who really believe in I'm a hero, that they would work their ass off. That they would be busy training every minute, they don't have anything else to do in the fire station. Who is a career firefighter here? Think about your fire station. Does it look like that? Are people busy all the time studying, training? I haven't seen a fire station like that, and in a way it makes me sad. And me neither, I'm not like that. If you're alone training, and then you're the idiot. It should be the other way around. We should train more, train harder, to advance stuff, and it's the job of the instructor to generate passion. A couple of months ago, maybe last year, I had to deliver training, and there was one firefighter, he was 4 months from retirement. A live fire training for a guy who is 4 months from retirement. How do you think the guy was there? Morning, live fire training, it's going to be physically, it's going to be hard. What's the purpose of this? I'm going to retire in 4 months. Why do they make me do this? That was his mindset. There's a way of dealing with that mentality. But at the end of the day, that same firefighter told me, hell, actually, I'm sad. I'm retiring in 4 months. This is fun. But this is that's the result you want. If they say, hey, this is fun, let's try more of this at the station, then we get them to train. We can't hold their hands. We can't be there 24/7, but we can try to inspire them, to make them go back to the moment they wanted to become a firefighter. Most of us, I think almost all of us, in the beginning, we are passionate about what we do. It's about keeping that passion alive. And that's a very important role for an instructor, to inspire passion and keep it alive through everything we do. Knowledge must be interesting. What we talk about must be necessary, and we must be driven. If we take the first letters, we also must be kind. This might be a good instructor, but not for the fire service. We're not getting shot at. Nobody is trying to kill us. The fire doesn't think. We don't need aggression. That might be different in the military. I don't know. I'm not a soldier. This is for me the best instructor, and it has not to be that, how shall I put it? He's working with small kids. We are working with adults, but still we must be kind. Yeah? We must allow mistakes. We must encourage people to make mistakes. When I was a young firefighter, yeah, sometimes I was scared because I got yelled at when I made a mistake. When I was a firefighter going into a platoon, there was that captain, we called him adjutant, and everybody was afraid of him. And then people freeze. Do you think we are learning a lot when we are frozen? That's not flexible, we're not open, we're just scared. He's gonna yell at me. So, encourage people to make mistakes, create an emotional, safe environment. That's also very important. Yeah. What about this one then? You told us to take them outside the comfort zone. Yeah, that's true. But this one applies as well. Outside the comfort zone, there is a zone where you can learn, where you can grow. But if you take it too far, then people get scared. They freeze and they will stop learning. They will panic. So that's an important quality for an instructor, is to play with that boundaries, to read people's faces and to adapt. The other day, one of my instructors sent me an email. He had a guy in the cell, and the guy turned out to be an autist. Is that a word in English? An autist? No? Autistic? Yeah, with a disorder. And it was clear it was not going to happen. And so they adapted the drill so he could stay the beginning of the exercise inside and then outside. It's not the responsibility of the instructor that a guy who is clearly unfit for the job shows up for training. But it sure is the responsibility of that instructor to make sure that at the end of the day, the guy goes home with more in his backpack than he arrived. That guy learned, and it was a difficult exercise because, yeah, this might be dangerous. Yeah, he's not comfortable at all. The guy was communicating, I didn't sleep last night, but they sent me here. So it's about adapting. Luckily, that's an exception, but most of the guys, you can see how far we are on the stretching. How do you think that a student will respond the best if he's training and things are going right, but not perfect? Are we going to focus on the 20% which is not good, or the 80% that he has done well? If you say, hey guy, that's good, 80%, that's nice, this you do good, this you do good, or this you didn't do well, which of the two students is going to be the best for the remainder of the day? Which one is going to grow the most? And which one is going to be, let's do nothing anymore, because then I won't get shouted at. That's important for an instructor. You need to think about the football coach, try to make them outside the comfort zone, try to bring them there, but not too far, and that's an individual variation. Who knows this guy? I figured out you would. Ed often has dead English firefighters in his presentation, so I thought let's put a dead American general.
Hal Moore.
Yeah, Hal Moore. Somebody else knows Hal Moore? There's a movie about what he did. We Were Soldiers, maybe some of you saw it. Hal Moore was an American general who, as a colonel in the Vietnam War, who thought of the concept of air cavalry. So use the helicopters as a horse to go into battle. And this is a movie clip. I'm going to show you a movie clip from We Were Soldiers when they were training firefighters. They were training soldiers so they could go to war together with a new system.
Take your boots off. Come on. Everybody, take your boots off. Everybody, socks too.
you to draw fresh socks from supply. Keep your feet dusted with powder.
Everybody check each other's feet like eyeball and me.
Alright, young man's leader. Yes, sir. That other feller. The big strong one there. He must have went medals.
What you see in this short clip is two different types of leaders and their boss. The colonel who looks and the old sergeant major who says, oh, what about this one? He sees the positive side, the potential in everybody. That's also as important as an instructor. An instructor is like a sculptor. It's already there, we just have to discover it and make it come to the surface. And if we focus on the good things, we will move into the right direction. So that's the instructor. Now learning for me it's two parts. Good class is two parts. There are learning outcomes to achieve, but there also needs to be fun. It's important that guys, they have fun. If you have such a boring class and the instructor, he's talking at the same tone all the time and he keeps on going and he doesn't move and he's talking and reading, if the class is boring, it's unsuccessful. Then the students at the end of the day, they might go home and talk to their colleagues, yeah, I learned a lot, but it was boring. And after a while, people will come to the class and they will be very unmotivated because they will know this is going to be a boring class. It's important that people have fun. They need to learn, but they also need to have fun, a good time. Then they'll come home and tell, hey, I went to the fire academy today and we learned this and this and this, and it was good fun. I didn't fall asleep. So that's also an important part of it. Now, it's important to have learning outcomes as well. If you only have fun, then you end up with stand-up comedy. And that's not the idea either. So we work with learning outcomes and they evolve. They evolved from 2008 till now. You know this guy, Shimon?
I cannot see clearly.
Yeah, well,
Bartos Cliff.
no. Pierre-Louis Lambalet. Yeah, Shimon had a French dude in his presentation. Lambalet was a French instructor who came to Belgium like 10 years ago. And he taught me stuff about the importance of a lesson plan and the importance of standardization and follow-up. So let's say he gave the first, he started the ball rolling. And some of the stuff he says I don't agree with, but the idea of lesson plans and structure is quite important. And then in 2009, I went to a course called 3D firefighting, and that's a picture of that course. You see a younger John, a younger Peter, and Jordan Ernst, who organized the course, and Sean. And there I learned a lot more. And then this happened. You know, the house Peter, this is the backyard of Peter's house in Canada. Peter invited us, so me, Hein, Maurice, he invited us to Canada for IFIW 2010. And there my world opened, because I had heroes, you know. I had heroes in the fire service. There was Ed, and there was Stefan Svensson, the guru of ventilation, people who were very distant at the time. I was like 10 years younger than I am now, way less confident. And that evening they were all there and you could talk to them. And they even answered. It was great. Yeah.
And my answer was, it depends.
Yeah. IFLW and this network has been very important for me. It has been inspiring. I've met a lot of interesting people with know-how, with knowledge, with new concepts, new ideas. Yeah. Instructors need to be nurtured with inspiration. If you want change, you'll need instructors, but you need to keep those going as well. So you will need to develop those and keep them inspired. Knowledge, but also the inspiration part. So if we have a good training program, you'll need to update the contents. What are we going to transfer? And also the training methods, how are we going to transfer it? Yeah. So when we work with our group of instructors, now in Flanders we have over 250 instructors for the attack cell, 5 locations, we have 6 different evolutions for the attack cell, we have 3 different evolutions for the T cell, for the loss volume cell, and all of this is moving, is changing. In 2 years' time, things will have changed, and each of these instructors needs to be up to date, otherwise things are not working out. Yeah. So if you work with the crew, nice picture. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go in a group. And this is my group. In the beginning, there were Heine and Maurice. They're both here today. Yeah, in the beginning, like 10 years ago, those were the guys who went along with me and held me back when sometimes I'm a bit too enthusiastic. Yeah, people who know me, they might, so they held me back when it was necessary, and they pushed me forward when it was necessary as well. And then throughout the years, people came along. 2 of them are present here today. The group became bigger. It's also an international thing. So Belgium is a very, very small country, and we have neighbors to the north, and they speak the same language as we do. So we can communicate. And Hans and Simco, we met along the years, and together we done stuff. We shared stuff. It's easier to do stuff when we're together. So how do we update contents? How do we make sure that everybody is up to date? Well, one of the things we use is a website. I have a website. I've written articles throughout the years. So if you go to website cfvtbe.com, you arrive here if you go to the English version, and you can click on publications and then on articles, and plenty of stuff is there. And I have lots of friends from all over the world who translate stuff. It's available in multiple languages. So what I ask my instructors is try to read this stuff. It's new concept, new ideas, so you're up to date with the new evolutions. Throughout these articles, I met people, I heard people, I have reactions. Throughout the whole thing, Dietmar is here. Where's Dietmar? There's Dietmar. Shimon is here. Steve, where's Steve? Brisbois. So I met people from all over the world, and sometimes they say, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe you could see it a different way. We do it this way. And so we learn from one another. And network is really important. If you're alone in your neck of the woods, as Jason Cohey would say, you only know your part. It's interesting to see how others do the same thing. Maybe they have a solution for your problem. I've been around, I've been to multiple countries, and one of the things I learned is we all have, for the most part, the same problems. We work with fire and we work with people. Fire is behaving more or less the same in large parts of the world. It's physics. And people, you know, assholes everywhere. Good guys everywhere. It's also the same. So the system we have in Belgium with all these evolutions, all these burns, if students begin with an evolution, there are learning outcomes. And often the learning outcomes of the first evolution are necessary to have a good second evolution, and so on. But the instructors doing this burn might not be the same as the instructors doing this burn. So the instructors doing this burn, they must be sure that the previous learning outcomes have been met. Therefore, all the instructors need to stick to the lesson program, to the learning outcomes. That's important. They need to deliver exactly what is planned. All these lesson plans are like recipes to make a meal. If you want to make spaghetti, everybody knows spaghetti, you know, with these sticks. Everybody knows? Yeah. If you want to try to cook spaghetti and you forget the pasta and you put something else there, like eggs, you're not going to have a meal, but it ain't going to be spaghetti. That's not how it's going to work. When I teach instructors, I always use the same image. I drive a Volvo, which the Swedes will love, yeah, a Swedish car. If I want to order a new car, in my case a Volvo, yeah, of a certain model. Now I drive a V60 and I order a red V60 because I'm a firefighter, I like red. So the car gets ordered, and 3 months later I go to the garage to pick up my car and there's a brand new blue V60. Is it a good car? Yeah, it's a good car. Will I be happy? No, I didn't order a blue car, I ordered a red one.
Maybe if they take 5,000 euros off the price.
No, I ordered a red one. It's perfectly possible to make other evolutions with other learning outcomes which are very good, which are very interesting. But that's not what we are expecting of the instructors, because we have a plan. We want to go up a ladder with our students, and if you're responsible for burn 3 and you say, oh, I'm going to tweak this and tweak this, I don't like this learning outcome, but they should learn this, the whole ladder turns into pieces, and the learning program, it will not achieve its outcomes. So it's really important that instructors stick to the plan, but therefore they need to know the plan. These learning outcomes, these lesson plans, they change. Every year we have updates, and so instructors need to update themselves. Yeah? An influential book that I'm reading for the moment is Start With Why by Simon I don't know how to pronounce his name, an American dude. And what he says is, you have to start with why, and our why are the learning outcomes. Why are we doing this? Well, to train students, to make them better. And what they have to achieve is learning outcomes, so for the evolutions, that's our why. Everything is in function of the learning outcomes. Yeah? At your website, which brought me enormous amount of information in the second half of the 2000s, cfbtus.com, the motto was not just what and how, but why. If we know why we're doing stuff, we're getting there. So it's important that what I tell here, we're going to move up a ladder of education, and it's important that everybody does his part in there. That's the why. The learning outcomes are the why, and the instructors, they need to be aware of that they have a crucial role in the development of firefighters, of colleagues, of future colleagues. My personal why, I wanted to make a better fire service. The why I communicated to my firefighters now in my platoon is, guys, I want to have effective, efficient and safe operations, and I want to have happy firefighters. That's my why, that's what I'm going for, and now everybody can see, hey, where are you heading? It's important as organization that we communicate our why, and that's also the case in training. So the learning outcomes is what it's all about, and I already discussed the lesson plan, so this is our structure. You can read, but it's no coincidence that we start with learning outcomes. This is why we're doing it, and this is how we're going to do it. So to get there, we have a 10-day instructor course to teach them how to work with the lesson plans. We try to inspire them. We have lots of attention for the soft skills, give a good briefing, set expectations, give a good debriefing, motivate the guys, try to explain what went well, try to coach them to see, hey, you can try to do a little bit better. We have 5-day courses for the T-cell, large volume cell, to make them grow. We have refresher training. Once a year there is refresher training. We try to adapt the lesson plans. We share new views on firefighting and on teaching. We started with the certification process. We invite our instructors to stand in front of the mirror. We're going to test them. How well do you know fire and firefighting? How well do you know these learning programs, the lesson plans? All the things which are surrounding health and safety, our zoning, we work with different zones to stop contamination, and they get an exam. If they pass the exam, they're certified for 5 years, and we've done it for the first time last year. Everybody passed, and we try to motivate our instructors to do more. You know this guy, Ed? He knows all my dead American, yeah, this is an American admiral. He knows Hyman Rickover. You know his nickname?
Father of the Nuclear Navy.
Father of the Nuclear Navy. This is an American admiral. He's been dead since 1886. He was a stubborn guy. I think I can say that. He's a bit, I can identify a bit in him. I've seen a movie about his life. And so he was the guy who had the idea in the early 50s, late 40s perhaps. Nuclear energy has been invented. Wouldn't it be cool if we could put a nuclear reactor into a submarine? until then, submarine, they had a diesel electric engine, which meant that they have to surface often. As in a submarine, you're vulnerable at the surface. And so he figured, if we have a nuclear reactor into a submarine, we can go below the surface for a long time. Now, one big problem is when he started, a nuclear reactor was the size of a complete house block. So like 100 at 100 meters. If you have to fit that in a submarine, that's not really going to cut it. So he had to make huge technological advances. And I'm going to show you another movie clip. So he's having a meeting with the design team about tests of a system with pumps and valves. And there is a guy who's responsible for safety in general aboard these nuclear subs. That was a new concept in the days. There is a guy who is responsible for all the pumps, and there's a guy who is responsible for the submarine project as a whole. And there is a problem. There were test results, tests had been done, and the results showed this is not going to work, we'll have to figure out something new. And he didn't know about it. So let's see what happens.
Well, we've finally gotten the first dynamic hot water test from the labs.
Even late in the development of the Nautilus, there were major engineering problems.
And bench tests of mechanisms in air and in room temperature water, and those looked all right too.
Never mind the good news, get to the problem.
We just got results from some bearing tests and some preliminary valve tests in pressurized water at full operating temperature. Some bearings froze, and some valves tended to seize up. Now these results are just preliminary.
Damn it!
The test equipment may be at fault.
If the problem goes away, we don't have to worry about it. As of right now, we have a problem. Our job is to anticipate the worst and then fix it. Did you know about this, Rockwell?
Yes, Admiral, I did.
Then why the hell didn't you tell me about it? Were you afraid I might take some action you wouldn't approve of? Or were you preparing some cozy cover story? Well, check it out and get back to me next week. If I have to, I'll come down to the yard myself.
Admiral, these results are very preliminary. I'm not sure they mean anything at all. I wanted to get some more information.
Rockwell, what does it mean? What's the very worst it could mean? If 1,000 tests come back with the exact same answer, what does it mean?
Well, if we can't get past this point...
That's what I asked,
we have
damn
to
it.
conclude that a pressurized water reactor system
The
will
whole
work.
system fails. And this is the news you wanted to keep from me. Did you know about this, Dunford?
Yes, sir, I did.
Jesus Christ. I'll get back to you later. Rockwell, don't you ever withhold bad news from me again thinking it might go away. I'll decide when to worry about it. Understand?
Yes, sir. I guess I figured this was Panoff's area. I didn't want to take over his turf.
His turf? Are there any implications here for safety? Does it matter to you if pumps and valves freeze up or the reactor control rod sticks?
Yes, sir. That would be disastrous, but it's...
Then it's your responsibility to tell me so. 100% your responsibility. And it's 100% Panoff's because the pumps and valves are his. And it's 100% Dunford's because he is the submarine project officer. The existence of these other people doesn't change your responsibility one whit. Do all you guys understand that? I don't want to have to keep going over and over this point again.
Rickover made his definition of responsibility a watchword for the program.
Responsibility is a unique concept. It can only reside and inhere in a single individual. You may share it with others, but your portion is not diminished. You may delegate it, but it is still with you. You may disclaim it, but you cannot
divest yourself of it. Unless you can point your finger at the man who is responsible when something goes wrong, then you have never had anyone really responsible.
You can be, you can like the American military, or you can hate them. But one thing is a fact. There were two main navies in the Cold War who had nuclear subs. There was one navy who had no accidents at all, and there was one other navy who had plenty nuclear incidents. So what he did with his responsibility idea is to make sure that everybody did what he needed to do. Yeah? Why would I show you this video? What's the link to what we have been discussing?
For me, it's that a team of instructor has to function as such, and not blaming or discussing who's in charge or is responsible, because it doesn't play a role to the student.
Yeah, that's a part of it. So instructors are responsible for delivering the learning outcomes, and they are a team. And each of those is, for me, 100% responsible. It's not because your colleague, he's cutting the edges off, he's letting stuff go, that you should not react to this. You can address him and say, this is not how it's in the book. We should do it as it's supposed to be. Each of the instructors is responsible for the end result, and the presence of the other doesn't change that. But there's also a second thing. If things are not going as planned, maybe we develop a curriculum and there is errors, bad news should flow up. And therefore it's important that the people who administrate the program, that they are open for critique. Also the good things should flow up. Maybe an instructor has an idea to improve stuff. When it flows up, it can be written into the lesson plans and it can flow down again, so everybody uses the same program. To summarize, in Flanders we have a tremendous success. I dare to say that we have a tremendous success with live fire training as a way to change the fire service and to make us more effective and more safe when it comes to firefighting. Yeah? Therefore we need instructors which need to be kind. Yeah? Learning must be a great experience. We need lesson plans which have to evolve. We need to train our instructors, we need refresher training. Certification might be a good idea for quality control, but ultimately instructors are responsible. I would like to finish off with a story. Peter, you're up again. Why I'm here. You saw the picture of Peter's backyard, 2010. That's 8 years ago. I was young then, a very young senior officer, full of ambition, but hell did I know. And Peter asked me in 2010 to deliver a presentation which made me very stressy. I was completely stressed out. There was one of the occasions where Maurice and Hein had to say, hey, it's going to be okay, just do it. And here afterwards, we went to America, to Indianapolis, FDIC. And if I remember correct, 12 or 16 spots were there to give a lecture. And Peter had to make a selection, and each of these spots, they got a free ride. Their plane got paid, the hotel got paid, the food got paid. It was quite interesting to have such a spot. And I had something like, yeah, no worries, we'll find money in Brussels to go over there. But when the list came out, my name was on the list. And some other well-known guys were not on the list. I calculated afterwards how much I got in, not the money, but they paid the hotel, the flight. I had to give 2 lectures and they gave me for $4,500 worth of hotel and flights. So it was a big deal. And I didn't understand. Why did he choose me? There are way more important guys with 20 more years on the job, way better instructors who could have gotten a slot. And I went to Peter and I asked him, yeah, but why? I don't understand. You're stepping on people's toes. I know some people are angry because you didn't pick them and you picked me. And Peter told me, it's because you're an agent of change. You're going to make change. All of you can be agents of change. If we all change something a little bit in our fire service for the good, all these little changes will add up and will end up with something that's really beautiful. I'm Karel Lambert. This was my talk. Thank you.